Chapter number 11 from your economics book of grade 11, and the name of the chapter is Structural Changes in the Indian Economy After Liberalization. Let's begin. Since 1991, there has been a major change in the strategies of development of Indian economy. The new economic policy was based on three major policy measures, namely number 1, the policy of liberalization, L, the number 2, the policy of privatization, P, and the policy of globalization is G. So in short we can say LPG. So liberalization of the Indian economy for various types of controls, license and permits, which regulated the non-agricultural sector before 1991. So privatization basically implied expansion of the private sector and limiting the role of the public sector. For G, that is globalization was the policy of opening up the Indian market to the other economies of the world. So what was the need for the Indians in 1991 to take such a step? Okay, number 1, weakness of the pre 1991 policies. So low rate of economic growth, rising unemployment, stagnation in the rate of domestic savings and investment, poor performance of public sector industries, and etc. So we can understand it was not developing, it got stagnated. So we were having a underdeveloped economy at that time. So next, point number 2, what was the need of the economic reform? Point number 2 is major foreign exchange crisis. First of all, they are saying, first point, the immediate cause of the foreign exchange crisis was the war between the Gulf countries of Iraq and Kuwait in 1990 to 91. This pushed up oil prices, right, which resulted that the import bills have also increased. Second, the Indians external debt, that is loan, had increased over time. The burden of interest and repay the loans was very large. Fresh loans were denied from the international institutions such as IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Number 3, foreign exchange in the form of NRI deposits was being withdrawn on very rapidly because of political instability, or you can say instability and uncertainty in India at that time. Next, finally, the growth and imports had always been far more than the growth of exports. So imports were increasing more than the exports. This led to deficit in the current account of balance of payments between January 1991 and June 1991, and India reached a situation in which it had foreign exchange just enough to meet the import needs of only about 3 weeks. At that moment they had to pay back. Okay, so they only had one option, that whatever gold reserve was there in the country was mortgaged to World Bank. That was the only thing done. Okay, next, number 3, conditions imposed by IMF and World Bank on India. So in the view of foreign exchange crisis, the government of India was pushed to the wall. Therefore it had to approach the IMF and the World Bank to tide over the crisis. So India got loan, and thus despite conditions of 1990 and 1991 and the pressure of IMF and the World Bank pushed India towards globalization. Okay, now fourth one was a blow, I'll say, and that was fall of a USSR. This is Union of Soviet Russia. Okay, the USSR and the East European countries had become the major markets of Indian consumer goods over the year. At the end of 1990, political system of these countries collapsed. India had therefore to reorganize its own policies to preserve its share in the world market. So, what are the policy of liberalization of Indian economy? So first, we have to understand what is the meaning of liberalization, right? It is a policy of doing away or reducing the government controls over industries, investment, imports, foreign exchange, and other activities which exerted before 1991. The Indian policy market were not thinking of the policy as laissez-faire, that is, completely unregulated economy, but of reduced regulations. Features of liberalization policy: delicensing. Before 1991, there existed a regulatory system of license and controls by the government. Okay, the industrial license policy led to unnecessary government interference. Liberalization was on abolishing the requirement of license and industries. So we can say 1991 we are getting liberated. The requirement of licensing was abolished for most of the industries except five, like alcohol, cigarettes, hazardous chemicals, means dangerous chemicals, okay, defense equipments, and industrial explosives. Is for security, strategy, social, and environmental reasons. The next point is what is the feature, that is relaxation and in controlling monopolies. Okay, under the monopolies is and restrictive trade practice is act, all the firms with the assets above a certain amount, that is rupees 100 crore since 1985, were permitted to enter selected industries only. Okay, and they were required to take approval from the government for any investment proposal. In order to make a deregulation more effective, restrictions on functioning of the monopolies had been relaxed. Okay, number 3, industrial location and policy liberalized. There was no need to obtain the approval of the government except the industries subjected to compulsory license. That means all the companies didn't have to take the license except few which was mentioned by the government of that time. Number 4, removal of restrictions of mergers. Okay, overtaking, takeover, separate of industries, and all were removed. That means you can see the government control is coming in a limited format. As much as the government was controlling the economy, they were just removing all the controls and liberalizing the market, making the market free now. Liberalization of capital market. A new company can be floated now can be floated now. However, Securities and Exchange Board of India (SEBI) had been set up as a watchdog for regulating the functions of the capital market. Number 5 is foreign exchange market reform. Flexible exchange rate has been introduced, under which exchange rate is determined by the market forces. The Reserve Bank of India (RBI) helps only to ensure that there are no extreme fluctuations in the exchange rate. Okay, next they are saying about the foreign trade reforms. The tariff restrictions and they have been considerably relaxed. Then developed infrastructure was given by the government, that is the communication system, the ship, the roads. Okay, everything got the aviation system, banking system, everything was getting reformed, everything was getting developed. Then easy and doing business. Okay, easy of doing business here, because so many permissions and permits and license were not needed at the time, except few. Okay, other changes were also there. And moreover, what is the significance of liberalization? We can just sum it up by saying that policy of liberalization had tried to overcome the problems of control raj which was applied by the government. Okay, then liberalization policy has proved uh, freedom, or provided freedom to the entrepreneurs. Liberalization policy has injected a spirit of competition in the economic system, which has increased the efficiency in the economy.